Good morning, MegaPodlings. This is Crazy Joe. As I mentioned the last time there was a video with myself and Chris Stoltz from Muppet Stuff, this was recorded at the same time. As you saw in the previous video, assuming you watched the other video, something went wrong with the file. This was a video. This was a video call. There was supposed to be video here. Something went wrong. The video file disappeared. It's unusable. However, I was able to salvage the audio. So this was supposed to be a video. You'll hear us talking about things around us. We assumed at the time you would be able to see what we were talking about because it was intended to be video. I don't know what happened. I don't know why the video didn't work. But the audio was saved, which is good because at least you get something. I mean, it could have been that the whole thing was unusable, but that's not the case. So here it is. Chris Stoltz and I reminisce about the life of Mr. Caroll Spinney.
Good morning, MegaPodlings. It's Crazy Joe, and I don't know which end you're on. I know this is going to be a split screen, but he's either over there or over there. Chris Stoltz from MuppetStuff.blogspot.com. Links below. And Chris is one of...
Hi.
Oh, go on. Yeah,
welcome. I'm
welcome.
here. Thank you for having me once again. Back again.
Again, coming to you from the Corona capital of Pennsylvania, Montgomery County. Both of us in the, but not in the same spot. Wouldn't it be something if like you were in the next room and like I got up and just like walked in and
Don't tell anybody.
But anyway, we're talking Muppet stuff because that's what you do.
That's what I'm here for.
We just did a video that you should be able to find on this channel about Netflix's Dark Crystal Age of Resistance. But now we got a little bit more of a somber topic again. We're a few months out. We probably should have done this sooner, but timing is never my friend. And that is we lost a giant in the world of Muppetry. These last couple months, and that is Mr. Caroll Spinney, aka Big Bird, aka Oscar the Grouch. So
yes, this was sad state of affairs. Poor Caroll was in not great health for a number of years, and I had the pleasure of seeing him doing at his convention appearances over the years. I had met him, maybe 10 years for the first time, maybe 10 or so years prior. He was doing a book signing for The Wisdom of Big Bird. And I got to see him again, a number of years later with these convention appearances. And, towards the end, you could definitely see a deterioration. And, there was a lot of fan concern that, why is he even doing these things? The man does not look well. And it was his own doing. He wanted to be there and he wanted to meet the fans until he could. So, hey, more props to him for that. I mean, that's amazing.
Yeah, you and I have a mutual friend, and anyone who is, I'd say, deep in Muppet fandom, this guy is probably a friend of yours on some level. That's Ryan Sullivan.
Yep.
And Ryan Sullivan was very, very close to the Spinney family. He used to travel with the Spinneys from city to city and work their convention table. And he said exactly what you're saying. He wanted to be there. It was his choice. It's not like I know when Jimmy Doohan from Star Trek was really suffering from Alzheimer's. A lot of people criticized his family, saying like, well, why is this family dragging this man with Alzheimer's to conventions? He looks confused. He looks like he doesn't want to be there. And I don't want to comment on the Doohan family because I don't know what went on behind the scenes, but that was a concern people had. Well, there can be no such concern with Caroll Spinney because we all know from firsthand accounts from people we know that that was his choice.
Right.
But,
and it's a testament to Caroll and Deb. that they persevered and brought him to conventions, and it was not easy because towards the end it was hard for him to write. It was hard to the guy he wasn't a loud talker to begin with, something I don't know anything about. But by the end though, you really had to be really, really close to hear him, because he just was a very soft talker, and he didn't have the the ability anymore to really project. It was but it was really a testament to him that he did he scheduled his last convention appearance. I believe it was Rhode Island Comic Con in November, and he did that appearance, and he got to go to one thing after that. I think it was the Empire State Building did a 50th anniversary of Sesame Street tribute. They lit the Empire State Building up for Sesame Street, and him and Deb were there, and Matt Vogel, who now performs Big Bird, he was Carol's understudy, was there as Big Bird, and they were all there, and he died like a couple of days, a week later, something, not long after. And it just goes to show, like, these guys, he wanted to be there as much as he could and do as much as he could while he was, alive. And I mean, you can't say he didn't. I mean, he it was amazing.
Even on the show, he was, I guess, in semi-retirement. He wasn't performing Big Bird on set anymore.
Right.
But it's my understanding he was still going in. He was doing dialogue looping for Big Bird and Oscar. And the reason was he did not want to leave the show before the 50th anniversary. He wanted to be there through the 50th anniversary year. And it's pretty incredible. I
mean, they shot the anniversary special, which if you haven't seen it, it's amazing. They did a tremendous job, and it's similar to the previous anniversary specials, and yet not like any of them at all. if that makes any sense, because it's a tribute to the music and the characters without getting into like the history of it or making it too kiddie, because the 25th special was sort of like the crown jewel of the Sesame Street specials, right? That's the one with Bill Cosby, which is a shame. It actually put it out on DVD a few years ago, but I don't think that's going to be as readily available because with all the Bill Cosby stuff going on, it puts a little kind of a stain on that. But the special itself is fantastic, and it goes into the history because you have a narrator, and then later on, a couple years later, you had the Elmo Palooza and all this other stuff that were tributes to the show and the music, but were a little more kid friendly. They're geared more towards children, and just like, oh, here's some characters. This was sort of like a combination of the two, which was really great. And the surprise appearance by Kermit was fantastic, even though we really didn't hang out with a lot of the other characters. Kind of did a little quick thing with Cookie Monster and Gonger for a second there, and he wasn't at the end, which is weird. But Carol, they filmed that back in I think May, and they aired in November. Which again, like they aired in November, and he was not around much longer after that. But that was just amazing that they got to do that. For he was there. He was a day one guy. What you don't remember that most people don't know about Carol was so when they did the test pilot for Sesame Street, right? There was no Big Bird even. It was just Bert and Ernie, and they were secluded from the rest of the show. They were in their own little apartment, and they would turn on the TV to kind of see what else was going on, with the show. But they didn't interact with anybody. They were not really on the street. They were just kind of their own thing. And the test audience, the children that watched that, that's all they cared about. They're like, oh, we're going to watch this. And the producers rightly realized that they should be mixing puppets and humans. They didn't think that would be a good idea. They thought it would kind of mess the reality up or give kids a false sense of reality with the puppets lived on the street or whatever their rationale back in the 60s was. But they realized that they needed, so they figured, okay, we should have a walk around person, stuff. And Jim Henson met Caroll Spinney at a puppetry convention that famously did not go as planned, and brought Caroll aboard, and made him. There was only 3 puppeteers when Sesame Street started. It was Jim Henson, Frank Oz, and Caroll Spinney, and they would do all the anything Muppets as well. I mean, so there's, everyone knows Caroll for Big Bird and Oscar because those are the main characters that he performed for 50 years. But he also did a number of early whatnot characters that appear, even throughout the 70s and 80s. He did a lot of other characters because there was only 3 hands on deck. They did all of them.
He had a lot to do with the shaping of what Big Bird became too, because in the first season, Big Bird wasn't working. He was kind of too much of a dope. Like he would walk around like he didn't know, and it was like Caroll Spinney who said, we should make him like a child. That's the way he should be. So like I think it was it season 2, they started implementing his changes. So really the success of the character in more ways than one is due to Caroll Spinney, not just his performance, but his guiding the way the performance would go.
Yeah, he could have had a talking voice like this. And then they softened that down and became a little nicer like this, and it's amazing. You watch those like first episodes and you're just, and you see him. He was on the Flip Wilson. He was on the Flip Wilson show, and you see this bumbling character, and you're just like, what is going on? It's like surprising to watch those clips today because it's not the Big Bird that we the rest of us really grew up with. But yeah, because things evolved, and he was much more of a klutz back in the day, and realized that really wasn't what the character. It didn't quite have the emotional impact, right? And you couldn't, 30 years later, whatever it is, when they did the Hurricane episodes, right? Those are like the 5 episode, arc, which is rare too. But you really get to see a range of emotions from Big Bird as he loses his nest. He thinks like his home's been destroyed. He's not sure, like he's homeless. He's not quite sure, what's going on. The whole neighborhood's a wreck, and you see like this, and you really couldn't. I don't think you would have gotten that sort of performance or that sort of character arc from the bumbling doofus. That just, I don't think it would have worked. So they're just the trajectory, of the character over the years was just something, and that's why he was a cultural icon. I mean, that's why there's a cover picture of Big Bird on Time magazine.
Yeah, I remember when I remember exactly the circumstances surrounding like when I got the word that he had passed, and I gotta say, I don't know if I told you this story before. You don't want to hear that someone who you greatly admire, that you grew up with, you don't want to hear that they've died at all. You don't want to hear that.
Right.
But I don't think I could have gotten the word that he had died in a more ideal way. Because I woke up that morning unaware Caroll Spinney had died. And my daughter and I, it was late November, I think. Was that right?
Yep.
Late November. We sat down and we watched Christmas Eve on Sesame Street. So I sat there and watched one of the best performances he ever gave. One of the greatest Sesame Street specials ever made. And I watched it unencumbered with grief. Just appreciating one of my absolute favorite Sesame Street specials, very Big Bird centric. And I watched it and I enjoyed it, and my daughter enjoyed it, and we laughed. And my wife said to me while we were watching it, "Do you want to go to Sesame Place later? Because we have a season pass." and say, okay, yeah, we'll watch this, we'll have lunch, we'll go to Sesame Place. That was our plan for the day. And the show stopped, it finished, it ended. I picked up my phone, I looked at Facebook, and read Caroll Spinney had died. And I'm like, I there was something very, very I don't know what the word is. I don't nice isn't the word because
You think about like cathartic or like a nice like emotional closure or
it was nice that I got to spend the morning appreciating his work unencumbered by that grief, and then got the word when it was over. And then we said, should we go to Sesame Place still? We went to Sesame Place, and we're driving in the car, and I said to my wife, I wonder what the mood's going to be like at Sesame Place. I wonder if they're going to put a sign up that says like, remembering Caroll Spinney or something. Like I wonder if it's going to be acknowledged in the park in any way. And it wasn't. It wasn't. And there were lots of kids there, lots of families, and nobody was talking about it. And I looked around and I thought, I wonder if these people know. Like, I wonder if these people have heard. Because it's like, it seems like this thing that's just kind of looming behind the scenes. But we got our picture taken with Big Bird. And we got our picture taken with Oscar the Grouch. And I walked away and I said, that was a very, very, I think, nice way to celebrate Caroll Spinney, because we went there and people were having fun and enjoying themselves, and there wasn't like this depressing like feel of death over the place, and we got to enjoy his most famous creations. We got to see them, get pictures with them, and it almost felt like we celebrated his legacy rather than sitting there crying over the loss.
Yeah, that's. I mean, I'm sure the many of the cast members must have known, but again, the news broke that morning, and some of these people might running around there at work. You don't know whoever's going. People, families are busy, and they're just like getting in the car, let's go. Some people aren't as connected to these the news, but I mean, it was everywhere. Like every major news organization did something. There was all kinds of news pushes about it. I mean, I just kept going on and on and on that day, and then at that night, all the news channels had something, so that was really great.
And I gotta say, not since Jim Henson died has the death of a Muppet performer gotten that kind of media attention.
Right.
Which tells you something. It's like, in many respects, he really only had two iconic Muppets, Big Bird and Oscar, whereas, like, you name everyone Frank Oz did and everyone Jim Henson did, and the list goes on and on and on and on. But I would argue that in the terms of the impact and the hearts and minds of the people, he may be second only to Jim Henson in terms of how beloved he was.
I'd probably say, him, Jim, and Frank, right?
Yeah.
I think Frank has done not just the characters, but he's gone on to such an amazing directorial career that I think he's touched people not just with his Muppet work, but with his other movies.
Right.
So I think those three are that are going to have will have the cultural impact that I mean, I personally, I'm sure you feel the same way. Would love each and every one of the performers to have the same cultural attachment, right?
Oh yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
For me, they're really. I mean, obviously there is sort of a hierarchy, right? Because no one else is going to be Jim Henson, and no one else ever will be. But at the same time, when Richard Hunt died, he died of AIDS during the AIDS epidemic, and back then the internet didn't really exist. I happened to find out about it months later in an issue of Entertainment Weekly that had talked about the faces of AIDS.
Yeah.
And it was just sort of like, oh, wait, Richard Hunt died? And
Do you know
then
when? Do you know when I found out? Do you know when I found out Richard Hunt died?
I'm gonna. It's probably gonna be the thing I'm gonna tell you next. It's
Okay.
probably because right after that, like that next year, I believe it was, is when Muppet Christmas Carol came out, or somewhere around there, and they had the tag at the front of the movie.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. There was no internet. There was no. I mean, and I'm a Muppet fan. I've always been a Muppet fan, but I think in terms of my connection to the rest of Muppet fandom, I'm much more connected now than I was back then. It's the internet, you know. It's the internet.
Oh, right.
Uh, so yeah, I found out sitting in a theater watching Muppet Christmas Carol. I'm like, oh, Richard Hunt died? I had no idea. It wasn't like reported. It wasn't like they weren't going on the news. Hey, Muppet performer Richard Hunt, best known for Scooter and Forgetful Jones. No, it wasn't reported. You found out
Right.
sometime later, and that's a terrible shame.
Yeah, and I might be mistaken. I might have mixed up my dates because it was 30 years ago. But yeah, I may have seen it first in the theater and then saw it at the Entertainment Weekly because I didn't know what he died of. It just sort of like what was going on here. And you know now we know that that's why Richard's characters aren't as well represented in Muppet Vision 3D because he was sick at the time, so he only could do a little bit. So that's why he did Scooter in the intro, but you don't see a whole lot of stuff going on. You see Sweetums, but he wasn't performed by Richard Hunt in Muppet Vision 3D. John Henson, who sadly also has now passed, performed Sweetums in that, and then Richard just did the voiceover. But again, there's been numerous people connected to the Hensons and the Muppets that have passed, and yeah, we're starting to. I think not only is it the internet, not only is it the new information that we get like rapidly these days, but I think a lot of people are realizing that there is more to these pieces of felt than just their interpretation. There's a hand literally helping them. They have and these performers are starting to finally get some of the recognition they deserve. And I think when you meet Caroll at these appearances that he was doing, and Steve Whitmire and these these other people, you see that these people, they care. They're not literally just a hired hand. They give a crap, and they put the hours in to make sure that the characterization really comes through, and it's and that's and I think finally people are seeing that. I mean, the headlines of the last couple of years that have been major headlines in the Muppet world were, I mean, not just in the Muppet world, but like in mainstream media, were Steve Whitmire getting fired and Caroll Spinney's passing, and that's that. They're both sort of in the same in a way, sort of like a death, right? You're not going to see Bean Bunny and Rizzo the Red performed by Steve anymore, and that's a shame, and that's hurtful, right? That's so. I mean, but it's a testament to the performers that this is even now, news. This is newsworthy, right? And that's because these people touched people, right? They put themselves out there and did something that generations are love and are beloved for.
Absolutely. Well, this is it's sad. It's sad, but the thing that I love about what these guys do is that they do have a sense of immortality. Big Bird lives on, and Oscar the Grouch lives on, and yeah, they're performed now by Matt Vogel and Eric Jacobson, but those characters were essentially created by Caroll. I mean, maybe a collaboration. Caroll and Jim. Jim may have said, "Hey, we're going to have this Grouch who lives in a trash can." So, in that respect, Caroll didn't create that character, but he created what the sound was going to be, what the personality was going to be. And then the next guy who picks it up is following the lead that was laid out for them. So every time you see Big Bird, okay, it's Matt Vogel in there, and I don't want to take away from what Matt Vogel's doing. He's doing he's continuing the character on as only he can, because you can't be Caroll Spinney, but you're still seeing the DNA of what Caroll created. So he's really going to live forever in a sense.
Right, and I mean, right, that's right, exactly. I mean, anytime you ever want to revisit Caroll Spinney's Big Bird, there's hundreds of hours of Sesame episodes. There's Follow That Bird. There's Elmo and Grouchland. There's a myriad of performances, like you said, Christmas Eve on Sesame Street to look back on fondly. And
there's also this documentary that if you haven't
absolutely.
seen, I Am Big Bird. This one's signed by Caroll. I already owned the movie and I bought a second copy from him just because I wanted to get it signed. But yeah, no, this is, if you haven't seen this is really worth watching.
Yeah, I think it's on one of the streaming services now, but you never know how when they'll take those off. But yeah,
Right.
if you can get a physical copy of it because you have it and you can watch it whenever you want. I was fortunate to be one of the Kickstarter backers of the original production, and so I received a full theatrical poster signed by Caroll, the Blu-ray, and a few other things, including something really special, a Big Bird feather. So that stuff is in a special place in my collection. That shows that the spotlights that, because it's not everyone has a Big Bird feather, even though the guy
It's an
feathers,
actual Big Bird feather.
that's what they say.
Wow, that's I almost got a Big Bird feather. Did I ever tell you that story?
Well, we know you recently went to Sesame Street. Did you try to steal one, Joe?
No. Big Bird. The last time I was there 2 years ago, Big Bird lost a feather, and they gave it to one of the guests visiting. There were 3 guests visiting that day. There was myself. There was my good friend Mr. Dave Perillo. But no, they gave it to the celebrity guest. Will Wheaton walked away with it that day. So had Will Wheaton not been there, I might have a Big Bird feather right now.
So what you're telling me is you and Sheldon from The Big Bang Theory have a mutual enemy.
Yes. Now, Will Wheaton was really sweet. In fact, let me tell you I'll tell you the legacy of Will Wheaton. The legacy of Will Wheaton's visit to Sesame Street. I saw Will Wheaton talking to Grover, and I decided, I got to get a picture with Will Wheaton and Grover, because who gets that? Who you go to visit the set of Sesame Street, you may get a picture with a Muppet. You go to a Star Trek convention, you may get a picture with Will Wheaton. Who gets a picture with Will Wheaton and Grover? I'm like, I gotta do this.
The 3 of you together, or just the 2
Yeah,
of them?
yeah, no, the 3 of us together.
Okay.
I'm like, I gotta get a picture with Will Wheaton and Grover. So they were in Hooper's store, having a conversation, and I walked over, and when I got there, I got to the point where it was too close for me to walk away now. Like, you ever been to a situation like that where you walked in too close?
What am I doing here? Oh crap! I've walked into something I probably shouldn't have, and now I
can't back out without being overly conspicuous. Yeah. Will Wheaton was having a very, very, very private moment with Grover that I inadvertently walked in on, and
Hooper's store is a public place.
Well, this is true. But Will Wheaton was really, really crying, like really just in tears, telling Grover how much he loved him as a child, how much he meant to him. And Will Wheaton's wife, Ann Wheaton, was standing there, and she's going like, "Will, are you okay? Are you all right?" And he was really, really emotionally shaken by his meeting with Grover. But he got himself together, and then I said, "Can I get a picture?" And we got a picture, and Flash forward 2 years later. Last week, I'm on the set, and Eric Jacobson was there, and my daughter got a picture with Grover, and my wife got a picture with Grover. And he said, "Would you like a picture with Grover?" And I said, "Well, I won't say no to another, but I do already have a picture with Grover. I got a picture with Grover and Will Wheaton." And Eric Jacobson said, "Oh, I remember that day." Will got weepy.
Well, I mean, I watched the video that you posted with your daughter and Grover, and you can see, because I don't want to speak out of school here, but I mean, because she's like 12 years old, right? You can see that she is not. She's too old to be completely in the mindset of Grover as an actual being. Spoiler alert, right? He's a puppet, right? So she's got that cognitive dissonance where, like, there's a dude talking to me with his hand up this thing as Grover, and she's also like, but they're taping me, and I should be more involved, because and like, to us as an adult, you can almost kind of go, full circle, where you can have that cognitive dissonance and separate it for the 30 seconds when the character is there and meet him. Because I had the exact same experience your daughter had when I met Kermit. Because Steve was there doing press, and I met Kermit, and Steve's talking to me, like from below as him, and it's also got Kermit. And I'm like, what's happening here? And he's like, don't talk to, let them just talk to Kermit. And I'm like, what? I'm like, and I know that I know to do this, but it kind of messes with you. So for Will to completely get emotionally engaged with Grover, that's not an easy thing to do. So props on him. But yes, it had to be a little strange for especially Eric, right? He's amazing with Grover. He's amazing. He took over Oscar for Caroll, and he's been doing amazing work with all of Frank's characters. But again, he's not Frank Oz. Like he was the Grover that Will technically grew up with is not really the same. I mean, it's still Grover, right? But it's not the same performer. But for him to just completely emotionally invest in the puppet like that, that's the power of puppetry and the power of the Muppets and the Muppet performers. But yeah, like I said, so it's gotta be a little weird. Like, what's like, what's going on up there?
Well, I gotta tell you, Jackie, my daughter, she's a little she can be a little shy. She could be a little shy, and I think that moment with Grover, she was very, very, very much enjoying that moment. But she also had this shyness about her where she didn't know how to react. And as the day went on, that was her first interaction with a Muppet that day. It wasn't her last. And the walls totally came down the second time, which I think is a credit to the performer. And I don't have it on video. I didn't want to get it on video because the performer was making no attempts to hide themselves, and I think it really would have shattered an illusion if I put a video online with her right there. But it was my daughter had a moment, quite a long moment actually, with Abby Kid Abby, and she walked away a cynical preteen, telling us she wanted to go back and hang out with Abby some more.
And that's what I'm saying. Like, I could totally tell. I could totally tell from the video that I saw that her you could just see like that age range. You could just totally see it. And as soon as you said the performer was with I knew immediately it was Abby and Leslie Carrera. I Rudolph. Because I know, like, that's she when she's there, she's just her, and I've seen that.
And I didn't want to get it on video because every time someone would take a picture of her, Abby would say, hide my human. And that told me Leslie does not want to be in a picture. Leslie does not want to be photographed. So I'm like, okay, I'll take still photos and I'll kind of like, angle it. But there was no way I was going to get video and not have Leslie in it. And because, Leslie she was right there. She was there. Like I couldn't angle my phone in such a way to get her out. So there's no video of that. But Jackie walked away that day close friends with Abby Cadabby. Let me tell you something, because she mentioned it. I've been going back and forth in emails with her. We're trying to set up a date for her to do a phone interview. But other than my email interactions with Leslie Carrera Rudolph, I've been in her company twice. We've exchanged words in a manner of speaking on 2 different occasions in person. I've never met her. I've met Abby Cadabby.
Well, I mean, her personality is Abby Cadabby in general, anyway. So even if you don't see Abby Cadabby in the felt, so to speak, when you see, if you ever see Leslie in person, it's like that same thing.
Talk about a talented performer. she's really good. But we are getting off track here. We were talking about Caroll and the great loss there. So yeah, I guess we should wrap this video up. What would you as a Muppet expert, if you had to name
those are your words, not mine, but okay.
If you had to name like one Muppet production, one Sesame Street production that you think is like the quintessential Caroll Spinney, what would it be?
Well, my favorite Caroll Spinney performance as Big Bird is probably Follow That Bird.
Okay.
There's so much, emotional trajectory in an arc, and I love the song "Easygoing Day." That's one of my favorite Big Bird songs. So I would say that. Oscar, right? If I have to pick, if I could choose the dichotomy of the personality, right? You choose Oscar. I mean, I love trash. You can't. I mean, how could you pick anything else other than that? I mean, sure you could, but you'd be wrong. Not, but for me, that's my Big Bird. It's Big Bird's movie. I mean, they didn't center the whole movie around him for no reason, right? So that's my Caroll Spinney.
I think that's a good choice. I would also personally suggest Big Bird in China. I think Big Bird in China
that's a great one.
A really, really good one.
And in the documentary and in person, Caroll told me that that was a major major undertaking, just in terms of getting the costume over there, in terms of the puppetry. We kind of glossed over this a minute ago, but I want to kind of swing back just for a second and talk about. You talked about Caroll taking risks and in the performances. Big Bird in China is a great example of Caroll Spinney taking risks as a performer in the costume. He's in a 8-foot yellow bird that he has very low visibility in walking. He has a monitor, and he's on a small rowboat in the middle of a lake. If that had if his balance wasn't quite right, if something happened, he probably could have drowned. Because this is one thing. The man roller skated backwards in the suit on the street. I mean, the amount of things that he did while in the costume
we should tell the people who don't know, who aren't familiar with how that costume works. There's no eye holes. Everything, he has a monitor in the stomach cavity that allows him to see what Big Bird sees. So he's looking at a monitor on the inside. Big Bird's head is his hand. His hand is above his head, controlling Big Bird's beak. His head is down lower, looking at a monitor, and he has the other hand is controlling one wing. The other wing is wired.
There's a little filament that goes up through the neck and back down to kind of give a counterbalance.
So every time you see Big Bird, you are seeing a guy with his hand above his head, and looking at a monitor, and that is his view of the world, what he sees in the monitor. So
And
it
the
is a
monitor
complex.
and from what I've seen is today, I think Matt has a larger, like, widescreen monitor in there. But what I've seen of the pictures of Caroll, it was, I mean, no, I mean, tiny. It was a really, really small thing. And later in years, he had his glasses on, watching this thing. I mean, really, really small monitor to view. When they were doing live appearances, they had a different live walk around version of Big Bird that. Give me 1 second. Sorry. That that had some eye holes kind of covered in the feathers up towards the neck. So for live appearances, you could see a little more. That's why Big Bird in the live appearances, you'll see sometimes he has a tie, because that kind of hid the eye hole. So the live appearances, you could see a little more, because you weren't always aware that there was a camera filming, so there wouldn't always necessarily be a monitor for you to see through. But productions like Big Bird in China, yeah, that's all they really had was just a monitor. So, and to see that, sometimes you're viewing. Let me make sure I get this, kind of explain this correctly. With the monitor view, sometimes most of the time you're seeing what the camera sees, not what the puppet would see, or what your focal point would be, right? So you have to remember that even when on this regular street, obviously after a number of years you kind of know where you are and where you're walking, and kind of get your bearings. But remember, he's not seeing even from the 8 foot tall, or even from here, right? He's seeing what the camera is seeing, and then walking and doing it backwards in reverse. And not because he's walking backwards, but because it's a mirrored image of of what's going on. You're seeing, so when he's walking right, the character's walking left. So just that in itself is a feat to behold.
Well, there we go. Caroll Spinney, one of the most complicated Muppets in terms of how it works, Big Bird. So that just is a testament to the performance. And yeah, that one hurt. That one hurt. We've had a lot of celebrity deaths over the years, but that one felt like we all lost a family member, I think.
Right. And in a way, we did. I mean, children today, just like we grew up, are watching Sesame Street. I mean, it's a staple like PB&J. I mean, this is something that families, generations have experienced. So yeah, it's very close.
Well, I want to thank you for being here. Again, our audience can find you. All links down below. MuppetStuff.blogspot.com. And
Facebook, Twitter. It's Muppets Stuff on Twitter, Muppet Stuff on Facebook, and as well Muppet Stuff on YouTube.
All right. Well, thanks for being here again. And
thanks for having me.
Hopefully when we get out of our house arrest and the streets are safe again, we can leave our homes,
and we can do it. We can do it in person rather than on a split screen. Yeah,
exactly. I thought I was going to be seeing you at the Great Philadelphia Comic Con at least in a couple weeks, but no, that is
postponed, or who knows.
Yeah, that's been postponed to Labor Day weekend. So
it has. That came out because I know I read something last night. I was out with our friend Cinema Sickness, and we were talking about that, and I read the announcement that it had yet not made a decision. It just said we don't know yet. So that's the new word, huh?
Labor Day weekend, same as Dragon Con. So Great Philadelphia Comic Con and Dragon Con are going on the exact same weekend.
Oh, jeez.
Last year I was at Dragon Con. This year I will be at Great Philadelphia. And then a few short weeks in the same exact convention center, RetroCon. So RetroCon and Great Philadelphia Comic Con are happening in the same month at the same location, just a couple weeks apart.
That's gonna be interesting.
All right. Well, hopefully I will see you before then.
Oh, well, yes. I would hope so. I would hope so.
All right. Well, check Chris's stuff out below. Check out the links. And thanks for being here. And keep wearing those pajamas.
Keep Keep wearing those pajamas.
With the plastic feet.
Keep wearing those pajamas.
Tell everyone you meet.
Keep wearing those pajamas.
With the backdoor flap.
Keep wearing those pajamas.
Don't open, it's a trap. Oh no, it's a trap. Some people call them PJs, some people call them jammies. They can come embroidered with big money and no whammies. They can have 100 tiny commander Adamas, but no matter how they look, just keep on wearing those pajamas.
Keep on wearing those pajamas. Keep wearing those pajamas.
And now we're having fun.
Keep wearing those pajamas.
And now the song is done.